Hello everybody. Today we'll be creating a new app, Collage. In this app we will have a canvas where we will add images from two sources. One will be the camera from the device and the other one will be the photo library. We'll be able to display different pickers where we will be able to select different images or what the user has taken. Let's begin by creating the app. Although it will be a SwiftUI app, this is going to be actually a hybrid app where some of the views are going to be in SwiftUI and some of them are going to be in UIKit, and you will soon see why. Okay, next, nothing new here. We will just create our main view that we will have when we open the app. We're gonna name it Canvas View. For now, we're just gonna have one view where we can just add images. Okay, so we're just gonna use a screenshot from my desktop for now, just so we can see how the images are going to look. We are gonna limit the size of these images so we can, well, actually fill the grid. Also, we want to avoid one image filling the entire screen. For now, to display the images, well, for this exercise, to display the images, we're gonna use a LazyVGrid. We want to have two columns here, so we're gonna have an array of grid items. Actually, I think it will be best if instead of the frame, we just let the VGrid resize the images. There. Okay, that's better. The first thing that we're gonna do is add a button so we can add an image from the photos library. We won't interact with the camera yet. We don't need to implement from scratch the logic to get the images from the user's library. For that, Apple already provides a view. One of them is the UIImagePickerViewController. We're going to use another one here from the Photos UI library, which is the PHPickerViewController. This one, well, does a lot of the job for us and has a nice interface where we can select more than one picture, one thing that you cannot do with UIImagePickerViewController. There's not a SwiftUI view equivalent for the PHPickerViewController, so what we can do is always fall back to UIViewControllerRepresentable, which is why I was mentioning that this is not going to be a purely SwiftUI application. We're going to have some UIKit view controllers embedded in these very handy structs. As mentioned, this UIViewControllerRepresentable is going to be a PHPickerViewController, so that's what this is going to return. To initialize this view controller, you need to pass in a configuration, which we're going to do with a photo library. We're going to use the .share. And because we need to configure more things, we will make this configuration a separate variable since we need to add different stuff here. The first property from the configuration that we will specify is the filter, which determines what types of assets we are fetching from the library. In this case, it's going to be images. Then for the selection limit, we will specify 0, which will allow the user to choose as many photos as they like. And then it will be the selection, we will be order, meaning that we will be displaying or fetching the images from this view controller in the same order that the user selected them. And selection is iOS 15, so we need to change the target deployment to 15. Now that we have the view controller that we want to present, what we are missing is getting the results from it. For this, of course, we have a delegate, a PHPicker view controller delegate. Unfortunately, our UIViewControllerRepresentable struct cannot conform to it. We need this to be a class. Luckily, this view is prepared for this with the coordinator property. Now, what's a coordinator? It's a separate class that this struct is going to use precisely for this type of situations. So let's create a separate class, which is going to be a Photos Picker View Coordinator. And this one, because it's a class, it can conform to the PHPickerViewController delegate. The only method it needs to conform is to did finish picking results. Be careful not to instantiate this coordinator directly in the make UIViewController method. There's a separate method for this called makeCoordinator in UIViewControllerRepresentable. There is where we construct the coordinator. And then in make UIViewController, we get the coordinator from the context. Oops, forgot to change the flag that we used to present this view. And there we have our PHPickerViewController. Here are the photos from the user's library. The user can select multiple pictures and then tap add or cancel. Nothing is happening because we need to implement, we need to do something in the delegate method. First off, we need to make sure that whether the users tap on cancel or add, we need to dismiss it. Let's add this print statement. So you can see when the user taps cancel, finish gets printed. When the user taps add, finish gets printed, meaning that no matter what the user chooses, this method will be called. So here's where we need to dismiss the view. And how can we do that from a UIViewControllerRepresentable? Through a binding variable where we pass in the boolean that we're using to present this modally. You know what? Let's change this. Instead of passing the binding variable, we're gonna use a closure, and then the boolean, we just change it from the view. So we're gonna pass a closure that we're gonna call on the delegate method. And why are we doing this? Because not only are we going to change the boolean, we're going to process these images in the view model that will then update the view. And now that our view model is ready, we can start using it to display the images instead of using this sample image. Now, what we're missing is getting the images from the results that our PH picker gives us. So let's create an array of images. Let's filter the results by just getting those that can be transformed to images. How can we do this? Because each of these results has an item provider, and to this item provider, we can ask if it can load objects of class UIImage. So we filter them, and then we iterate over them. Again, we ask the item provider to load an object of class UIImage. That gives you a closure with two things. One is the object, and the other one is an error if there was some parsing the object. Now, why do I say object? Is because this is of type, this is not yet an image. We need to cast it, so for that we use a guard. If the guard fails, let's just return. Let's call the handler with whatever we were able to parse up until now. If it is successful, we add the image to our array. Because all of this is being loaded asynchronously, it can happen more than one at the same time. We will compare this array of images with the images result size. If it is the same, then we will call the finish handler with the images array. Let's try with what we have now. Let's present the picker. Let's select two images and then tap add. And we're only seeing one image. Plus, oh, I see the warning there. We are missing calling this finish handler in the main thread. Okay, I had to do a little bit debugging and web searching here because the images were not loading on the simulator. Turns out there is a bug with the PHPickerViewController and simulator where the images were not loading properly. I saw that restarting the device and just trying to run again the application seemed to work. I just restarted the simulator, so let's try again selecting several images and let's tap on add. The delay is because it's loading the images, and okay, apparently the fix worked. Although this is working, I'm going to connect my real device since there the experience is consistent. Okay, now I can improve this experience a little bit because I don't want the picker to be frozen when after we tap add while it's loading the images. So let's change it so now our photos picker view will still have the closure, but it will also have a binding boolean for the flag that is present in the sheet so it can be dismissed before it finishes loading all of the images. Now let's move on to the second part of this exercise, which is getting images from the camera. For that, we'll create another button to display a different controller that will get an image from a picture taken by the user. Because we are going to be presenting another sheet, we need to have a different binding boolean for this. So we'll create another one, we'll create another sheet modifier, and our camera button will change this other flag. Now we need to place this button behind a property that we'll get from the view model, which will indicate us if the user can actually take pictures. We needed the property in the view model because we need to ask the UIImagePickerController class if the camera is available on the device. The camera may not be available because it is currently being used by another application. Okay, now what we are missing is creating another UIViewRepresentable that will embed a UIImagePickerController, the controller that we're going to use to access the camera of the device. This controller is also capable of accessing the library, but we're only interested in the camera since PHPicker is already doing the library for us. So in the source type, we specify .camera. Just like PHPickerViewController, UIImagePickerController needs a delegate. And again, for that, we're going to create a coordinator. Just like we did before, we'll have a closure where we'll pass the image taken by the user to the view model. Let's also add a binding variable to dismiss the view. All right, the coordinator also needs to conform to UI navigation controller delegate. Now moving on to the delegate method, this one is a little bit easier than PHPickerViewController. Here we have a dictionary where we can ask for the original image. We see if we can cast it to a UI image, and if so, then we pass that image in the closure. Now that our camera picker view is ready, let's switch what we are presenting in the view, and let's run and see why our application will crash. Oh, let's first fix the flag that we are changing with the camera button. Okay, let's tap now on the camera, and nothing happened. We have a crash. Let's wait for the breakpoint to stall. Okay, and let's read what's happening. So if you see the description of the crash, it's saying that the app's info list must contain an NS camera usage description. That is because the UIImagePickerController is going to ask the user for permissions to access the camera, and it needs to display a string that your application must have and provide. Once again, step on the camera. Notice that now we have the prompt to access the camera, and we have the string that we specified. So here we have the camera. Let's take one picture, and let's use that photo. And there we have it. The closure works. The photo is passed to the view model. Now let's try with the other one. As I told you, it's better to try it on a real device with the PHPicker because of the bug with the simulator. And here we have the images. However, we chose 5, but we're only seeing 4 images here. Let's try picking even more. So 13. We do not have 13 images here. Something is going wrong with the implementation. So let's check that out. So the first thing that's wrong is that we're doing too much stuff in our photos picker view. We should be doing most of this in the view model. So for that, our closure will instead pass the PHPicker result. That way we can get the result from the view controller and dismiss it immediately. Then we will do whatever processing or validation needs to be done in the view model, and that way we don't risk what is happening now, which is because we're processing a lot of images and dismissing at the same time, there's not enough time to process all of the images before this view gets deallocated. Notice how simpler this implementation becomes. We're just calling the closure, passing in the images result, and changing the flag that's presenting us. And now our implementation even allows for a better experience where we process all of these results in the view model one by one. But what's important is that we don't need to wait for every single image to be processed. We can add them as we're going just by appending an image to the images variable that we have in this view model. And because this is a published variable that's being observed by the view, it will update. Let's try once more. Camera still working. Now let's go for the images. Let's select a bunch. Now let's tap on add. Notice how it gets dismissed immediately and how we are loading this, which is a much better user experience than what we had before. And that was all. You saw 2 very useful view controllers today. PHPickerViewController, which allows you to select multiple images without the need of implementing much yourself, just processing the results somewhere. And then the UIImagePickerController UIMagePickerController, which can also select images from the library, but only one at a time, and its other more useful feature, which is accessing the camera to take pictures or video. Both of these could be easily integrated with SwiftUI thanks to UIViewControllerRepresentable. Hope you liked the video. Bye!